Welcome back to another episode of Chant Talk. I'm your host, Patrick Torsel, and today we're talking about the Our Lady of Mount Carmel hymnal. Now, this hymnal is a new offering. It's actually not quite available for order yet, but it will be very soon. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about this evaluation copy that I've received. Now, this hymnal is produced by Music Manuscript Service. The primary editor was Maestro Rick Wheeler, who is a colleague of mine. And it is published by Os Justi Press. It's got a beautiful foreword written by Dr. Peter Kwasniewski. Now, before I go any further, I do need to disclose that my name is in this hymnal. I'm credited for assistance with musicology, history, layout, things like that. The truth is I contributed very minimally to this, but I did think it valuable for you to know that my name does show up in this hymnal. However, this review will be a as unbiased as possible review of what I think is great about this hymnal, where I think maybe it might be lacking a little bit, and then I want to kind of break it down. Like, whom is this for, and maybe whom is it not for? So let's just dive right into what this is. So this is a very sturdy, well-bound, beautiful hymnal. It lays in the hand well. It's got heft to it, but it's not so heavy that you can't hold it in one hand and sing from it, right? And I think that balance is really super important. It lays open very nicely. The printing is beautiful. Everything is very readable. And I think it's very comfortable to hold. Like I said, it's got some heft to it. But you can hold this to sing an entire hymn. One thing I really like about it is that it is sizable enough that you can really read what's on the page. You know, some hymnals try to condense everything into such a small page size that you really can't read it. This is really beautifully done. One thing I love about this hymnal, among many things, it has the entire Kyriale in here. All of the settings, the Latin settings of the ordinary of the Mass are in here, plus some extras, things that perhaps you haven't seen before. So really, truly drawing out of the patrimony of Catholic music. One great feature is the common tones of the Mass. So if you are singing for Mass, especially the 1962 rite, of course this hymnal can be used for either, but especially if you're singing the 1962 rite, we have the common tones of the Mass, which are very helpful. Dominus vobiscum, et cum spiritu tuo, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. So those are all in here for the tone for the gospel, for the preface tone, solemn ferial, the most solemn tone, at the paternoster, pontifical blessings if there's a bishop. So many wonderful things in here to help you through this with the common tones of the Mass. Now, when we really get into the actual hymnody here, there is a massive selection of metrical hymnody and chant hymnody. In fact, there's more than 600 hymns in this. There's 800 and some odd pages here. But more than 600 hymns for the entire liturgical year. But what I really like is it's not just the liturgical year. It's not just stuff for Advent, Christmas, Lent, Easter, ordinary time, or the time after Pentecost, etc. There are hymns in here, so many hymns for saints, specific saints, groups of saints, stuff that I don't really see in many other hymnals. And again, both metrical hymnody and Gregorian chants. So you've got pretty much anything you could possibly need throughout an entire liturgical year. Now, I want to talk about how the hymns are actually set in here. And one thing I love is all of the Gregorian chant hymns are in very beautifully typeset 4-line staff chant notation. Now, in my opinion, this is a major pro for this book. In my experience, having been a music director, a choral director, an organist, many things in church music, your average person in the pews who doesn't read music at all actually finds chant notation more intuitive. I know that probably sounds contrary to what some people would assume, but it's very intuitive to read. It's just diatonic. You just follow it in the stepwise motion or the intervals written, and when they can hear either organ accompaniment or a choir singing, it's very easy to follow along in chant notation. So I love that every chant in here is in chant notation. Another thing I love about this is that all of the metrical hymnody, or I should say almost all the metrical hymnody, is in 4 parts, SATB. Now I know a lot of A lot of publishers of hymnals and editors of hymnals choose to only give the melody line for the pew edition. I don't like that. I like that everybody is reading from the same page and that the people in the pews can read the parts as well. In so many Catholic churches, all you find is a melody line. I think this is wonderful. I happen to love the idea that I could go into a church with this hymnal and they're singing perhaps O Sanctissima and I could read out the tenor line and sing along. I think that's fantastic. So that's great. And speaking of those SATB arrangements, they're also very playable on the organ, and great care, it appears to me that great care was taken to ensure that these, the kind of the voice leading, the part writing, the harmonizations themselves are very traditional, very true to the originals, very, very classic. So that's a lovely thing. Along those same lines, the words are unadulterated as well. The lyrics to all of the hymns, they're not modernized. You won't find, if it said thee, it says thee. If it said thy, it says thy, not you or your. There's no forced inclusive language, which I think is a great thing in this hymnal's favor. It's simply true to how these hymns were written and how they're meant to be. Another thing that I would say in its favor is that it is not merely old stuff, right? We're not just talking about ancient chants or the most traditional and classic of hymnody. There are also some more modern compositions in here. There are, it really runs the whole gamut from the most ancient of chants right through more modern compositions, and certainly including all the favorite traditional hymnody in between. And I think, in my opinion, that really represents the best of what sacred music has to offer. We don't limit ourselves to just the old or just the new. We take each piece and determine whether it's fitting for the Mass. And this hymnal, the Our Lady of Mount Carmel hymnal, puts together more than 600 hymns that are very beautifully appropriate for the holy sacrifice of the Mass in the liturgical setting. And I think when we talk about there being, old and new in here, like, this is great. We have here Hosanna to the Son of David, a beautiful hymn written by Sister Mary Cherubim Schaefer, who lived until 1977. And that's just one example. You can certainly get your hands on one of these and look through yourself to see that there's everything in here from the most ancient to the present day, and I think that's wonderful. Another really nice feature is that there is a selection of hymns in here that have organ introductions. For example, here on this Jesu Dulcis Memoria, there's an organ introduction written right into the score. And so that's a very nice feature. Some of us love improvising, our introductions and interludes and postludes, but others perhaps don't so much. And so here, again, Sister Mary Cherubim Schaefer arranges this Jesu Rex Admirabilis with a lovely organ intro and outro at the end. So those are some really nice features. Another strong point in the favor of the Our Lady of Mount Carmel hymnal. It's a one edition fits all. You look at so many other hymnals on the market and you have to buy a bunch of different editions to do the job. You need the pew edition for the people in the pews. You need the choral edition so that you get the SATB parts for your choir and your director. And then you need to buy the organ edition so that your organist has something to work from. Well, with this hymnal, it's all right here. Everybody can work from the same book. So there's never any discrepancy in arrangement or harmony or lyrics or anything. You're working from the same book, which, in my opinion, is a strength for this hymnal. You can place your bulk order, and everybody uses the same thing. There are some very cool special features for the extraordinary form for the 1962 rite. For example, near the front there is the complete texts and chants of the 1962 Requiem, which is great. I mean, you even if you don't do many of these, you can follow along very clearly because the rubrics are here, the chants are here with all of any verses they may have for the burial, for entering the church, and then for the Mass itself. All of the propers are right here, and the same thing for the nuptial Mass for weddings in the 1962 rite. So I think that's a great feature for anyone who does work in the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite. And finally, I guess, as I continue to wax on here about what I think are the pros of this hymnal, it's a hymnal. A true, pure hymnal. It's not trying to be anything else. It's not a missal. It's not. It's nothing else but a pure hymnal of truly Catholic metrical hymnody, Gregorian chants, as I mentioned, the full Kyriale plus some extras, all of the settings of the Credo, music for every occasion in the liturgical year of the Roman Catholic Church. Now that does bring me to what are maybe a couple of criticisms that I would offer, and this will be a shorter list, but there are a couple things that I think could be better. One thing that I find kind of conspicuously lacking is an index by season. As anyone knows who's tried to plan music, often you want to be able to just reference the season and see what all is there. Now, I will say that's mitigated somewhat because the hymnal is largely organized by season, right? So if you find Lent, well, you know you're looking at Lent. If you find Christmas, you're looking at Christmas. But there's not a specific index by season. Now, in the alphabetical index, which is quite beautifully done, there is a column that lists the season. So that is helpful, and you can absolutely use that, but it's just not organized in a way that you could just quickly go to the season and find what you're looking for. So I would level that as a minor criticism. One other thing that this is lacking, and this doesn't bother me, this wouldn't be a problem for me, but I do think it could be a problem for some music programs. This hymnal does not have metrical, vernacular, or English settings of the ordinary. It just has the Latin chant ordinaries. Now, again, for me, that's exactly what I want, whether I'm working in the extraordinary form or the Novus Ordo. But that is something that's lacking from this hymnal, and I think it's fair to point out that that could be a weakness for some folks. And finally, again, it's a shorter list because truly this is a marvelous hymnal. But finally, while this has more beautiful and varied hymns than probably maybe any other hymnal on the market for Catholic churches, you're still going to find some things lacking. And I think that's not a criticism that's fair to say of this hymnal specifically, but of any hymnal. But you'll find, you'll once in a while find that one hymn you were looking for is just not in here. I mean, for example, it's Advent now as I record this, and if I wanted People Look East, it's not in here. If I wanted O Come Divine Messiah, that's not in here. Nevertheless, this hymnal probably has more hymns for Advent than any single hymnal I've ever seen in my life. So again, a couple of minor criticisms in the interest of being honest and saying it's not perfect, because no hymnal is, but it's the closest thing I've seen to perfection for a Catholic hymnal. So let's talk about then, when you kind of distill down those pros and cons I've talked about, the question becomes, whom is this hymnal for and whom is it not for? Well, I would say, first of all, this hymnal is absolutely for any Catholic music program that truly desires to be faithful to the authentic patrimony of Catholic sacred music. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean a music program that really wants to draw its inspiration and develop an ethos based on the most authentic music of the Catholic Church, starting with Gregorian chant, and then, of course, opening its arms to the beautiful repertoire of hymnody and sacred music that's out there. When you want the best of chant and metrical hymnody, it's in here. This is for you. Anyone who wants really beautifully typeset scores, both the music notation and the words, again, for both metrical hymnody as well as the Gregorian chants. These are typeset beautifully. They don't look chintzy, they don't look cheap, they don't look like they're condescending to someone who doesn't understand music, but they're very readable to anybody. So, very beautifully typeset. Any music program that, as I mentioned before, would like to be able to buy one single edition to do everything. You don't need to buy the pew edition for the pews and the choral edition for the choristers. This does everything, and I'll mention in a minute, I have good reason to believe it's going to be very fairly priced. music programs that value having SATB settings of metrical hymns for everybody, and then, of course, as I mentioned before, the four-line staff chant notation for everybody as well. I will note that this is especially well suited to the 1962 extraordinary form of the Roman Rite because of things like all of the chant ordinaries in the Kyriale, along with the Requiem and Nuptial Mass. But it is absolutely not a hymnal that's only suited to one form of the rite. This hymnal is a Catholic hymnal through and through. Now, with all that said, where does this hymnal maybe not fit in so well? This won't work for you if you are a church or perhaps you have a pastor that insists on a hymnal missal combo. It's not what it is. It's not what it's meant to be. Frankly, that's one of the reasons I like it. But if that is a framework in which you have to work, this isn't going to work for your parish. However, I would still say you ought to have this on your shelf for your choir. Okay? Who else will this not really work for? Anyone at either of the two extremes, right? So on the one hand, a puritanical music program that supposes that anything written after, say, 1955 is modernist garbage, or that anything written by or influenced by a Protestant is therefore automatically heretical and excluded. Okay, so if you're on that puritanical side, well, you know what? Sorry, I guess it's probably not going to be for you because this covers the whole gamut of authentic sacred music. On the other hand, if your music program is one that is heavily modeled around the sentimentalism of the 60s and 70s kind of folk or maybe a more modern praise and worship, this isn't what you're looking for. Then again, you know what I'm going to say? It's what you need. This is what you need. This is what the Catholic Church asks of sacred music. So maybe do a little prayer and introspection because maybe this is what you need. Okay. Again, I'll mention, like I said before, if you're a Novus Ordo parish that is particularly attached to vernacular metrical settings of the ordinary, you're not going to find them in here. Again, I still say this is a good hymnal for you, but you may need to do something different if you insist on sticking with those metrical vernacular ordinaries. Okay, so what's the bottom line? In my opinion, and after having spent now several weeks leafing through, playing through, singing through what is contained in this hymnal, I think it's the best Catholic hymnal out there. That's my opinion. I hope that what I've shared with you will give you enough information to maybe want to get your hands on a copy and check it out yourself. Is it perfect? No. I don't know of a single Catholic hymnal that is perfect, but I believe that this is leaps and bounds better than most of what's on the market right now. So where can you find out more? Where can you buy it? Well, it's not available in bulk production yet, though it will be very, very soon. I believe, don't quote me on this for sure because I think it's still under discussion, but I believe that in bulk, say 800 or 900 copies or more, you'll be able to get these, all 800 pages of it, for about $20 a copy, which if you take a look at the hymnal market out there right now for a beautifully bound hardcover hymnal, that's a pretty fair price. I suspect that the small quantity price, 1 to, 100 or whatever, will probably be more like $25 a copy, and my understanding is that there are multiple tiers being considered in between there. So, however many you need, there's going to be a pricing tier for you, and I think it's going to be very reasonably priced for the quality of workmanship that you're getting here, not only in the binding and in the book itself, but in the layout, the settings, the variety, the harmonizations, the traditional unadulterated lyrics and texts. So I think it's great. I personally think it's a great deal. If it piques your interest, go to CatholicHymnal.com. Yes, that's CatholicHymnal.com. Check out a little more information there. There's a sign-up form on that page if you want to be notified once it's available for bulk ordering. And you'll be notified. You can let the publisher know how many copies you think you might be interested in, 1 to a billion, whatever you might be looking for. And finally, I would note that if you do want to get an evaluation copy, like I have here, to get your hands on it yourself and take a look, shoot an email to info at catholichymnal.com. And Maestro Wheeler will be able to connect with you and see about getting you an evaluation copy. Those are more expensive because they're being printed kind of, one-off as evaluation copies, but still more than worth it, in my opinion, to get your hands on what I think is an absolutely gorgeous and just eminently useful Catholic hymnal. This is what Catholic music is meant to be. So, check out the Our Lady of Mount Carmel hymnal. I hope this was of some interest and value to you. And make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more Chant Talk in the future. God bless.